you reached out to me and you gave me so much information, talking about your experience in Zimbabwe and your experience in. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, how about you actually introduce yourself? How about we start with that? Introduce yourself to everyone and give everyone a rundown of your experience and some of the things that you were floating by me the other day. Click though.
Great. So I've been in Tennessee for maybe 30 years or so, but I originally came from Zimbabwe. Came here on teaching assignment, then went into private business. I was running a satellite company then, and then into healthcare, where I'm an occupational therapist. Basically, I sort of learn about every person's job and I try to assimilate it. So back in the day, I was involved in networking 486 at Parenyatwa Hospital in Zimbabwe, and trying to make the first searchable engine of sorts, but there was no internet then. So anyway, when I came to the States, I was quite obsessed with money and its creation because my first job was a bank teller, and we used to run a lot of uh, peer-to-peer payments and people grouping money and they give it to someone and so forth. And so when I came here, I used to think, how can you transfer value or at least put this in the internet? Because I was one of the very early people to be networking on my satellite company that I was working on. But then in 2007, I opened a clothing store, which was a big thing because I wasn't into that, but I just liked selling clothes. But I started doing these crazy commercials, and one of the views went up to billions of views. Was on Jimmy Kimmel, was on a lot of television shows, GT, FIFA TV, and they said it was a transition for small businesses. In fact, for businesses into YouTube at that particular time. So now YouTube, as you know, is sort of like a business platform. So YouTube sort of credits me for that. They say, "Oh, you did that," but before that, started to create this idea. If you can look at it on my platform, on my X platform, you see there's a link there that says Memphis Money. And at that time, we're talking. I was working with the university students at University of Memphis laboratory lab, trying to create money, digital money called Bitcoin. And you won't believe it, we were actually calling it Bitcoin, but we couldn't share that information to anyone. We were just like, nobody would believe it. It just looked ridiculous. But anyway, about 6 months later, I had published an article on Memphis Flyer, and then 6 months later, Bitcoin was born um, with the same namesake. So if you look on the article, you can see some of the prints and talking about the same thing. So Bitcoin was born, but the idea for me remains, uh, where I feel like this is a great idea, but it's not reaching the people in Africa the way it should. The main reason being because of the digital divide. So many people in Africa, they love to use mobile money now, but they're limited by data, and they're limited by their ability to manipulate the phone and use it effectively because they're not in that culture. So if you look at the difference here in America, people grow playing video games, getting acclimatized to punching buttons. So the psychology and the mindset and the framework is different. So, and to bridge up, and then if they used to holding cash, then um, it became easier later on to bridge it up because the government sort of forced them to do it, and it works because they couldn't keep printing money. But now you have a lot of mobile money; it's working really well, but the access to the internet is still affecting Africa in general. So they're still not able to utilize the internet, even if they have it for its maximum effect, other than just browsing, reading, if they have the opportunity to do that, if they hardly have the opportunity to do that. So then, if you look at, there's a lot of the poverty has sort of reduced, but it's still very extreme. My dad himself is an elected senator in the opposition party. My uncle, of course, is the president of Zimbabwe currently, even though we are on the opposite side and we don't really jive well, but we can work together if it's for the benefit of Zimbabwe, because it's, you know, we got lots of differences. Yeah, take it that way. So, so then the idea that I started to say too, when I saw you and I've been reading you and following everything you've been doing, I was like, this guy, I think I need to see if I can get hold of him. But at that time, there wasn't a lot of spaces going on, and so it was not as easy for me to reach out as it is now. Um, so, and then I said, let me break it down, and I did write you something. I think earlier today. Let me see if yeah, I did write you something today. I'm not sure if let me see. It was uh, a sort of a project. Wonder if I deleted it by error. I wanted to just read it to you. It was sort of so in this idea, I started to say the rural folks anyway are having a hard time in Zimbabwe. They want to have ability to buy digital assets the way we are doing it. Even if we preach self custody, which is great because it's for us, we understand it, but the discipline even then for us is not as easy because we used to banking to know that if you have to keep $10 million in the bank, in the house, that's self custody. And people in Zimbabwe do that, to be honest, but they get killed, they get robbed. It's been very, very difficult. So even us in crypto now, we don't. I still have a lot of money in the bank, but of course it's invested as well. Of course I transact a lot from Bitcoin because I can do that, but for the most part, most people can't. But still, I still have money in the bank. It's still there. Um, so therefore, self custody is sort of a nice myth for transitioning. So we need a hybrid system. We can't say, well, we don't want self custody completely because it's Satoshi. It's not peer to peer. We don't want centralization. Sometimes for us as Africans, we have this leadership system which has wanted people to look even to people like Trump as a strong man. Otherwise, people still need that comfort and that security, that leadership, that essence of knowing that you can go and speak to an expert who is trained to secure things. And that trust factor, even though it's ridiculous, it is ridiculous, but for Africa, we have to at least have the ability to custody for the rural woman who wants to sell a goat and a cow and convert it into Bitcoin. They don't have the ability and the skill set and the technology and the internet. They need to have access. So we have to build a bank, a real place where they can walk in, transact, see Bitcoin machines out, come in and be able to have access to get an account created for them, um, and custody for them, and at least even a debit card created. They can swipe, come in, out, and withdraw some cash, and still have also locked funds for 10, 15, 30 years for retirement, because I believe Bitcoin needs to be in Africa, and people need to start getting to own it. If we don't encourage it, because we are preaching self custody, it's disenfranchisement. In my view, as a black man, I believe in affirmative action, because my upbringing is not the same to allow me to compete with a civilization that my people are still living in huts, and they still cross rivers to go to school. It's very hard,
Look,
to
though, I
live.
think you actually hit on a really interesting point, actually, with that, especially when it comes to access to a lot of these different technologies and the capabilities as well. Especially with what you were talking about in terms of having lack of access to just those general trading accounts, or at least having that self custody component and still having access to those services. But now, I mean, presuming what is the barrier to entry for internet access, but now with that being the main barrier to entry to be able to engage in a lot of these services, I think the real name of the game is how do we allow these services to be more accessible for regular people to be able to utilize them in the way that you've described, to where they can manifest those benefits.
Right. And that's where I said, I look for people with your technical expertise and the skill set to develop such products. And I obviously can facilitate everything for us to make it happen in a partnership well. So that's why I say, well, how we develop this Bank of Africa, this digital Ion Bank, which is ION, um, uh, Bitcoin uh, Bank of Africa. And we definitely would be very good in marketing, which is very easy in Africa for me, and uh, so adoption will be fast. But first, the product has to be there. So using all the connections and everything that is required, I think it will be easy to accomplish adoption. It's just that no one has been preaching it as much as we could now, if we had to assume such a name tailor it XD uh, um, technology. I think that would be great. I mean, that's what I think. So that's why I said, well, let me reach out and figure out how this can be a dream come true from Memphis and finally put it back into Africa, because I wasn't able to create Bitcoin, but I think I want people to store it in Africa and facilitate growth and better retirements. Yeah, that's what I think. And of course, transactability with the use of XDC assets, and all assets in general must be able to be transactable and within this digital banking system.
Yeah. I think the big thing, and I think this is actually really key, and this is why I actually wanted to talk to you on this space, is uh, sort of what I spoke about before in terms of like the barrier to entry. A lot of people don't get this, but uh, when it comes to being able to build on these networks, if you want to be able, you see this in terms of like DeFi and people creating marketplaces and tokenizing, NFTs or whatever. But the barrier to entry to be able to create a lot of like sophisticated finance services is incredibly low. So traditionally, where you would need all of this infrastructure, whether this is business relationships or partnerships, whether this is access to market makers, whether this is all of this infrastructure, just to be able to get the ball rolling, you could essentially just utilize essentially the blockchain as its own like autonomous infrastructure, and then build your services that can interact with other services. I think the key thing that I wanted to talk with you about was, well, two things, I guess. One being tokenization and what that could look like, and with that being, what do these peer-to-peer economies look like? Like, this could be ranging from somebody at the store being able to buy goods, all the way up to businesses being able to exchange goods with each other, or exchange what's it called, raw goods with each other to build products or something. All of these operate very similarly, and the reason I say that is the same marketplace that could be used as a general marketplace smart contract could be the exact same marketplace contract that's used to facilitate OTC trade between farmers and commodities and such. One may be dealing with goods on a smaller scale, and the tokens they may be tracking may be a little bit different, but fundamentally the services are similar. And I think the thing that that needs to be emphasized is the focus on one, how you can build these services, like what you can do with smart contracts, and how you can implement them in such a way for regular people to be able to utilize them. We know that obviously, if you hold a wallet and you hold crypto, you'd be able to, pair your wallet, or whether it's a browser wallet or Wallet Connect or something, and have some aspect of interacting with your smart contract from there. But there's quite a bit of barrier to entry for the majority of users out there. So this is an element of how do we make it easier for grandma and like your 10-year-old or whatever. But the biggest thing is being able to create these services that are able to be comparable to what these giant organizations would be able to provide. And I think is being able to find that market, and being able to satisfy it. Actually, I need to introduce you to another person who's working. He's working with farmers directly. He's actually trying to set up his own farm. He's
Oh,
setting up a marketplace. I forgot where. I think it was. I don't want to mess it up. It was somewhere in Africa. And he's setting up a
okay.
marketplace for farmers to be able to engage peer to peer, and for them to be able to tokenize their crops and then be able to sell them, as well as be
Wow.
able to create other sophisticated finance products on top of that, so they can be able to really sell them at a given price and be able to move them and keep track of them. And he's trying to do a lot of things, but the
I,
biggest thing
I
is
really
being able to have this
think,
peer to peer
wow,
market. What was
that's
that?
a that is amazing.
Hmm.
If one can do that, that is amazing, because the most important wealth in Africa is cattle.
Did you say cattle?
Yes, that's the most important wealth. If you have cattle, more cattle you have, you considered very rich. So
Really?
if we can tokenize uh, cattle and crops, that is amazing.
I am very. I need to pick at this a little bit. Cattle. Cattle is like the cash crop. Uh,
No,
uh,
it's the cow.
oh, not the
Yes,
like not crap. My bad. But like the cash commodity.
yeah,
Yeah.
see, yeah. So they got many cows, and like in Texas, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the more you have, um, like the Maasai, that's your wealth. And so remember, the majority of people, 90% live in the rural areas. So what we see, like in South Africa and Nigeria, those are city guys, and they do have a westernized life, and they look at American TV, so it's exciting. But the majority live in the they don't some of them don't even have money, but they have to sell money different intervals to pay school fees or to do this and that, timely, because they are subsistence farmers. And of course they have a lot of savings, and they are also entrepreneurs as well. And some of them are rich, but they keep their cash in the mattresses. So and that's the point, that they don't know that the money is losing value. so I think that's why we need to quickly move it into tokenization, like you say. And it's
Well,
the potential is great, and that market is ignored. And we need to get there, because the problem we have now is everybody wants it quick and fast. But I think building a base, like what we're talking about, and this tokenization that XDC is doing, it's fantastic. I think it's really coming from the ground up. And by the way, I hold a significant amount of token of XDC.
no, that's cool. That's cool. I was actually gonna say, especially with your cattle example,
Yeah,
there's so I think this is a perfect example. I never even really thought about cat. This is why I love talking to people, because every time I talk to people, there's somebody who's just talking about some random thing in some way where I'm like, oh crap, that's actually super interesting. No,
right.
so when dealing with cattle, obviously you have the raising of the cattle, the growing of the cattle. They probably slaughter it. They probably take it to these different meat. They probably move the meat to these different marketplaces.
Yeah,
There are so many different means of being able to continuously trade that same. It's the same cattle, but it's still broken up into, and maybe it gets mixed with some other things too once it finally gets made into a final product. These are all different things that can be exchanged on chain and be traded. That's why I was thinking like, oh, cattle, like that's like the big like the cash commodity cattle.
yeah,
And that's
yeah.
the thing though. You have supply chains all around cattle. You have supply chains just to feed the cattle. So you have the supply chain to feed the cattle, and then a supply chain to to slaughter the cattle. But these are all different systems that provide these really that just provide like just business like services. But the
Right.
thing is it removes a lot of friction, and sort of what you were saying with a lot of these people just holding on to cash. Not only is their cash like losing value, but it's just sitting there. That cash could be working capital for them. They could be buying more inventory. They could be expanding their business. They could be even finding something to store it in if you wanted to buy gold or buy whatever. It's just it could be working capital that could be doing anything else rather than like losing value, like you say. And just having a environment where it can be deployed and very easily like very liquid and accessible, as well as to a bunch of other assets that you may want to have access to as well, because this may mean you're able to get more of the things that run your business because you're able to move that capital a lot quicker. And that's also going to create growth for you because that means you're able to move more business in the same amount of time. But it's just one of those
Right.
things where these are all systems that are all centered around tokenization. You have the tokenization of the cattle itself. You have the supply chains around the cattle and the supply chains around the things that feed the cattle. You have the supply chains around each individual good from that farm that's going out to each different processing plant. Hell, you have supply chains around the fuel that's being processed in the machine that's even moving these crops in the first place. All of
Right.
these essentially can operate on chain in some regard and be referenced and allow for people to have an easier means of trading in e-commerce.
Exactly. Definitely. So yeah. So So the first step then would be to find a mutual relationship in this venture. If it's possible, I'll be very
I
grateful.
need to introduce you to Khalil. That's who he's doing a lot. He is, like I said, he's creating his own marketplace for these farmers. He's doing a
Mhm.
few things too. So one, he's creating this like peer to peer marketplace, but then he's creating these like these pools. So a lot of the capital that they would need to have access to, they deal in like 100,000, 500,000, like these chunks, and an individual farmer may only have like 10,000, maybe $20,000 worth of crops at a given time. So they can enter into these pools to get access to these bigger contracts. And these
Right.
contracts are and yep, and these contracts are like this. It's so interesting how this is. I've got to get you guys in contact because he's doing a lot with that. He's doing a lot, and it's super cool. It's super cool because really, at the end of the day, he's just allowing them to be able to trade and have access. Really, it's higher efficiency amongst the trade partners and the means of being able to engage in that trade, like using the blockchain.
Mhm.
But then also it's just faster. So like I said, you know, all this sitting capital, you can actually start work. You can start doing more, and
That'd be it.
I think he's a perfect example of. And that's the thing. I'm not saying that just because he wants to build his own marketplace. He even wants to build his own farm, and because his problem now isn't even the marketplace, it's consolidating his own like micro supply chains between these independent farmers
Mhm.
and these different markets that these goods are being like sold and stored in. And he has a bunch of unorthodox methods on doing that, mostly because there's either the traditional methods are incredibly expensive, and more unorthodox methods may I don't know what he's like. He was telling me this whole thing with like people taking like dirt bikes and moving like X amount of pounds per like it was a whole thing. But it was
Oh,
also part of like stimulating the economy where people
yes.
can essentially have these like gig jobs to be able to move. So it's a whole thing. It's really cool.
Yeah, Africa is so diverse. 54 countries. I'm 55 now, and the lifestyle sort of kind of the same, but the culture kind of the same, with diverse though. With the different rich tapestry for each country. And I think that there is a potential to actually. I know that Cardano has been doing some work there. I haven't actually. I just heard. I haven't seen it, but I heard that they are doing some work there. So I would love to see if we can bring XDC there. I mean, is it possible? Can we do it?
What was that?
If we can bring XDC to Zimbabwe, Africa.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think there's a lot that can be done. Actually, especially with what you were telling me in regards to what you're trying to do in
Right.
terms of like changing the culture, getting people very like acclimated and more familiar. I think one thing that I want you to meet Khalil, but two, there's a few other people I think I want you to meet that are also dealing with. One's dealing with a payment service within
Oh,
Africa, so people can be able to send money in and out of Africa
right.
utilizing stable coins. And then the other one's this marketplace for these commodified these tokenized commodities within these farmers. I
Okay.
both of these projects I need to introduce you to. I think you guys could have a
The
good
one
time.
the one with the stable coins, is he creating a new one, or they're using the same ones that we have?
No, they're using an already established. I think they're using USDC,
Okay.
and some of the other established ones. Yeah, what they're and that's the thing. So what they're doing, their users will see that there's like dollars or whatever in their account.
Okay.
But whenever they do, because they're mostly focused on like cross border payments, and really like cross border like between the different borders in Africa and such.
Right.
But the biggest thing is, from their perspective, they just see like the money transfer, and if they have to move to one network to another network or move one stablecoin to the other stablecoin, their app does that on the back end, so their users can send money to each other while their application manages how those funds are sent.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. That's good, because because you see, Western Union charges out of $100, you have to lose $10,
Yeah,
right?
their fees are super cheap. I think their fees are like 2% maybe, like
Is
maybe like a percentage and a half. And I would say even that's high. But the reason why their fees are high is because they're bridging a bunch of systems together and they're doing a lot. But And there's another project. It's not an Africa project, but euros. The euro stablecoin. It's
Okay.
probably one of the biggest. The reason I say that is euros is becoming more saturated in liquidity than dollars right now. I mean, for the moment,
Oh wow.
moment being.
Yeah.
But the thing is with that's just another trade medium that you can engage with. And don't get me wrong, like you're gonna opt to a stable coin when the native cryptocurrency is being like XDC for this instance is being incredibly volatile. And then opt to the native cryptocurrency for liquidity just because you have more access to more trade partners, more liquidity into more assets. But I
Right.
think you're going to see these microeconomies exist where, let's say, in different economies in Africa, they have a set of stable coins. And maybe in a different Asian economies, they have their own stable coins. And you have these local economies that use their own stable coins. But then when these local economies engage with outside economies, they'll use the native cryptocurrency to do so.
Okay. And so that means, yeah. But as long as we you can then swap in between them with less cost, and it's fine. It doesn't matter, right? And
Yeah,
the
yeah,
other one hasn't
yeah.
lost value.
My
Yeah,
bad.
because if the other one isn't pegged, then it's okay. As long as I think most of them will be pegged to the dollar anyway, if they do most stable coins. So
I
that should be
think
fine.
and it's actually like a really it's like a controversial issue because yeah, most stable coins are really just going to be like fiat derivatives of whatever fiat currency, like that, like or whatever denomination
Is there
exists on chain.
in any other stable coin in any other different value set yet except the USD?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, so like people would say like a real true stable coin would either have to be like some amazing like algorithmic stable coin or some coin that basically there's the argument that there hasn't been a true stable coin yet because everything is just a derivative and not really like a true stable unit of, you know how people talk about the idea of like a store of value. Well, like
Okay.
what would be the coin that was like a store of value to $1 but didn't inflate away, and it's there's a whole philosophy on what a true stable coin is, and
More,
no
the
stable coin truly falls
more
into
like the
that.
balance a little bit.
What was that?
More like a balancer a little bit. That's how it will self adjust according to not pegged completely to one unit.
Yeah,
But
I think the idea comes into like, yeah, I don't know how it would work. Maybe you're pegging it to like grain or gold. I don't know.
yeah, if you peg it to gold, I think it will make sense. It of course it
Maybe
does.
maybe they choose like cobalt or something, like some precious metal that has some industry use that has constant demand regardless of economic conditions or something. I think that, or lithium, that could be one or something. I don't know. Maybe it's a collection. I don't know. Like,
They just did a Zimbabwe gold digital dollar, the first that is a cryptocurrency dollar pegged to the gold in Zimbabwe. They call it the ZIG, but
really, the Zig?
yes. So the idea was to video film the gold in the vault 24/7 to give us evidence that there is really gold that is going to correspond to the value of the ZIG. So the units, every time you buy your units in gold. So everything is transacted in gold. So you'll be having zero point 0.0 whatever units, but it can be expressed in the form of dollars. So all you do is you are swiping. You might see dollars, but everything that's running behind is the units of gold. And so, but also it can show you how much you have in real gold. And
This
so,
is
yeah,
interesting. So
yeah.
the
So
redemptive value is the gold backing.
it's the gold backing, yes. So that
That's
means there's swapping between the gold, the vault, and your wallet. That the trade is constantly going. It's actually operational. It's a beautiful system. The problem is that the gold vault is empty. You don't conditions there.
I'm sorry. That was just so beautiful. That was just so. I'm sorry.
They couldn't prove it that there is gold. The system is working. People are saying, look, we're ready to buy and load money in it, but show us the gold.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
So you see, they sell gold in Dubai quickly and they make
Wait,
cash.
is it one of those things where the gold is technically some paper gold that's held in some theoretical safe in some other place that also probably holds some paper gold that's
Oh,
claiming to hold your
there's
gold? Like,
gold. There's a lot of gold. But they ship it out of the country to sell it there to fund development projects or whatever. So there is never enough for them to store it because they are behind. And some of it is missing.
that is, I'm reading this now.
Yeah.
The Zig. This is really interesting. This is so. Oh my goodness! Like, holy cow! Like,
Yeah, so some of it is missing. So there was a show on TV lately about the what they call the gold mafia, which runs it from Dubai. And these guys are sophisticated. They have hijacked African presidents, and they even threaten African presidents with extortion and death if they don't ship the gold the way they want. So that is a documentary. It's crazy. I think that has a little bit of conspiracy in it, whether it's true. But yeah, they showed these vehicles being stashed with hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars being moved and shipped after the gold has been sold. I mean, there's just and lately the South African president was had $4 billion in his house. People tried to rob it. Cash. I'm talking about cash. Have you ever seen $4 billion?
cash.
I never seen it. I've never even heard of that.
Holy
So
cow!
how do
Running
you?
in the president's house.
Yeah, how do you in his ranch? It was in his ranch. There were nothing but bricks and bricks and bricks. So these people went in there to they got caught by cameras trying to get in because nobody was living there, or maybe they were just maids living there. So these are
Oh, just
the
maids.
true stories of Africa and the amount of money there, but it's just not being used effectively. We can channel it.
That just the security risk on that, even if there was insurance, the cost on that must be wild. If someone could just run in there and just, what is it, cash? Is it gold? Like if it's just physical tangibles, like that is so, like, just the mere fact that it's just not digital makes that wild.
Right.
And how often does this happen? Like, not like to him, but like just in general.
Every day. I mean, like one of these guys there, his name is Wickno Shiva. He's kind of like some celebrity. He bought all his church members. I think they're like 2,000 of them. You know, these big mega churches. Uh, every one of them, he bought them a car, like a 4x4 Range Rover or Mercedes Benz. And they were lining up in a line. I've never seen anything like that. You just and they build these massive mansions that you get lost in. It's like, where do they get this money? They are miners of gold. And these guys are young people, of course, you know how they did it in Zimbabwe. They drove all the British descendants, even though they were also Zimbabweans, after the colonialists at that time, had children, and these children inherited whatever they had, and then of course they continued to fight over land, and then they got driven. Now the land is right in the hands of the black people in Zimbabwe, and but of course it's misappropriated back into the political, big wigs that are now controlling the country. So for that reason, of course, they've given opportunity to small people, small guys, young people to own mines and also try and prospect anywhere they can find. So that's why there's this velocity of cash in Zimbabwe, but they still not how many people can go and dig, at least. So there's enough to cause commotion because it's still a small country, but there is a lot of money going in that is supposed to be used effectively, and obviously this training isn't there yet, but they are receptive to anything that is great. Yeah, once it's provided, I have hope in that.
Now, the thing that I would really have to say, if how much of the economy is dealt in like straight cash, and like not like just liquid like cash, but like paper cash, like or like tangibles like that.
They have significantly cut paper use. You might find dirty currency, a lot of USD, but in terms of US dollars, it's all cash. Now they are multi-currency, right? And you see Chinese yuan, it's all cash. South African rands. Now, when you come to what is called real-time gross settlement, which is RTGS, which is a system that the feds were using here in the United States, somehow Zimbabwe is using that system. Uh, the feds use it internally. Zimbabwe is using it for the general public. It's called RTGS. I don't know if you've heard of that. And it's fast. It's instant. It's not a blockchain system, but you can mobile money. It's not mobile money. It's called RTGS. So it breaks the money into US dollars. They call it RTGS dollar. Yeah, and so that's what they normally use, and but they're always calculating because it's so fluctuating, and it fell by 90% in the last uh, 3 months after elections. So they never see that money because it's intangible. But then they have bonds, which is in paper. That velocity is probably 20%, whereas 80% is more.
I think you're cutting out now. You said 80% was were bonds.
They never see that money because it's
Oh
intangible.
crap!
But then they have bonds, which is in paper. That velocity is probably
And of
20%, whereas
course,
80% is more.
literally just X's space just crashed. What crap? What absolute crap? Give me 1 second. We can get this back. Um, we can get this back. Yeah, let me start this. It was really nice having him on. He reached out to me while I was on another space talking a little bit about quite a bit about the stuff he was talking about, and just a lot of the complexities and the friction and the inefficiencies and a bunch of stuff. And it was interesting because I know a few other people that have been telling me the same thing about a lot of the inefficiencies, not even just in Africa, but uh, in any place that may have, I don't even want to call it lackluster infrastructure, but if you're not like a big four bank or big four organization or like or big 10 or something, like you just don't have the same, like you just don't have the same like capital, you don't have the same access to like participants, you just don't have the same everything. And then when you start seeing like economies that are like built on this infrastructure that's really not like anything crazy, it's like, oh shoot, like what are ways that we can make this more efficient? And one of the biggest things is because a lot of people can create their own type of services that are comparable to a lot of these big organizations. These smaller economies can now get all of the benefits that these bigger organizations have without having all of the infrastructure. Um, let's see if I can get him back. If not, it's okay. This is a chill little space. If anybody has any questions, fire them real quick. Uh, all right. There he is. Let's let me see if I can add you up here.
Hello, I'm back. Something happened. I think our
Yeah,
signal.
yeah. The X spaces can be a little wonky sometimes, so it happens. Hopefully, it's not too big of an issue, but sorry about that.
Is the data? Maybe I was actually advising Elon yesterday. I said X-Space is becoming a bit violent for me personally because I see some African videos of chopping heads. I've never seen anything like that. Now there's porn.
So
I
X actually, it's funny that you bring that up because like we all saw this with like 4chan in terms of like just being like the absolutist in terms of like just pioneering, and as long as it's legal it should be here. But like 4chan can't get any advertisers because mostly because like it's full of a lot of vile stuff.
right.
And really nothing that like the audience base doesn't isn't like that big. Now Twitter has the audience base, but like I remember when was it like October 7th when all that was going on. There were like literally people getting shot and like blown up like on my feed and stuff. And that's one thing, but I'm like, how do they make money? How do you guys
Did you,
make money
did
in
you
terms
jump
of
from the
ads?
chair when you saw like there was this guy who was stamping somebody's head with all his force? I'm like, do you not know it doesn't take a long time to kill a person when you hit the head? It's like I don't think that person survived, and it's on experts. It's like then no
Yeah.
one the ties. So I wrote him a letter says, why don't you have customization of I want to watch porn, and if I click that, or I don't want to watch porn, then you have an exclusionary button in the menu for make sure you organize your stuff. So it's not. And then of course Elon, of course, is obsessed with making arguments to prove himself right, and now he's talking about affirmative action is bad and immigration is bad, and he's from South Africa. It's like he doesn't make logic for some of his arguments. So it's like he's
I
making
think you're just
enemies for no
describing. I
reason.
just think you're describing the space becoming like. I think everything has just become hyper political now. I don't know if you can blame like social media for that, or if we're just like in a late stage culture where now everything comes back down to like certain political ideas that keep getting brought up every 4 years. I think that a lot of that comes down to. Don't get me wrong. I think there's a lot of like social like pressures and forces.
Or
Mostly just people like having expectations or people getting upset because different ideas of what they thought were I don't know normal or correct get challenged. So yeah, I think it's just the normalization of that. I think that's really what that is. Because it's not just Elon. It feels like it's everybody.
you,
Where
so
everything comes
I,
back to these like hypothetical arguments with shadows of people that you had like conversations you had a while ago.
well, you are very forgiving because I think Elon is in the thick of it. I mean, he was talking about the Harvard professor. I mean, I looked at that dissertation. I mean, it was bad referencing, but and you know how musicians sometimes you think it's your lyrics but you kind of heard it somewhere, so there is diffusion of information sometimes, and you might actually be very sharp and intelligent to actually recreate it as if it's yours, and you might leave one sentence and then you're like, oh, you plagiarized. So Elon, he knows that, and so I feel he's playing a race card for some reason, and I don't know why he's doing that to himself. To me, that's how I feel as a black man. And of course, I know him from South Africa and his history. And
like
so
like
I
I
don't know.
said, I
I
think I think
don't
everything has just become political on Twitter.
Yeah,
But I wanted to ask you. It was
yeah,
like the last thing I wanted to ask you before it went on the space cutout.
yeah.
From everything that you've seen in the crypto space and everything that you've seen in regards to talking about tokenization, talking about like blockchain, what would you like to see more of? in Africa that maybe you see here or not seeing here, or could see like very promising in the future?
Um, yeah, I think the many people are farmers, right? And being farmers, they have a difficulty of getting their products to the market, and they have a difficulty of actually accounting. So, and also there's also organic farming, which is growing up big time there. There is not, you know, tracking, which has been also an important aspect to be able to uh, enhance the process of accounting. So, those are the things I want to see. I would like to see something of that sort where we can track the products, more like the way what VChain has been doing, um, and authentication. Those are some of the small things I might want to see. But on the major aspect is definitely tokenizing cattle, like we're talking about. That would be a great product, and even tokenizing all the crops. The other thing I was talking about is the banking sector. We need to find a way to build the digital bank of Africa, the Bitcoin Bank of Africa. Those are the things I'm quite thinking about that could make sense for us.
Yeah, that all comes down to that lowering of the barrier of entry of being able to create those financial services that would otherwise need that giant infrastructure to be able to facilitate. I think being
Right.
able to, I think capitalizing on smart contracts, tokenization, and being able to take services that are being provided on chain and allow those services to be accessible to regular people, especially regular people that don't even have access to anything comparable or any sort of analogous technology.
Right.
But yeah, it was super awesome having you on. I want to maybe have you on more often. I'm trying to make it more of like a thing in regards to uh, as I engage with more and more people in the space and get more and more perspectives. I
Right.
want to be able to have it be like an ongoing canon where we can continuously have these conversations and build upon them as the space matures.
Right. And one thing yeah, I like that. Sorry. And one thing I wanted to think about clearly was one of the organization that I'm in it called Zimbabwe Economic Movement, that I advocate economic development in Zimbabwe. Um, it's 100,000 member organization. You know, some of them are paid members, and we to sort of fund certain projects, this and that, like boreholes. But what we discovered is that the diaspora community, when they do transactions to remit, they pay. We are losing about $200 million in Zimbabwe alone, and because of that, we maybe at least $400 million in Zimbabwe alone because of the because we bring about 5 billion. And so if you are to take about 10% or so, which the Western Union and World Remit are charging. So I tried to create what is called Zempay, Zempay, Zempay. So now I was more interested in using XRP for that, to see if I can collaborate to use. So I had sort of emailed them and all that, but that didn't go anywhere. So the team is ready and the project was set to go. But obviously, with the invention of the Bitcoin Bank of Africa, which is called the Ion Bank of Africa, um, we with the Iron Bank of Africa, then I thought the remittance product can also just now we just remove the Zempe and just create it under the Iron Bank of Africa, Iron Bank of Bitcoin Bank of Africa, and just put it under the same project so that the remittances can happen there. So remittances, to me, obviously on that, of course, investment is number one, and remittance is number two, and tokenization is also number one, because you can't do anything without it, right? For what we are trying to do. So yeah, so that's what I have.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. I definitely want to be able to follow up with everything that not only that you're going up, that you're following up with, but also potentially make the introduction to you. Hopefully I might be able to make the introduction on stream. I wanted to bring Khalil on stream and talk about his experience with his
Okay.
marketplace and the farmers and all of that. So maybe if I can get him on stream, maybe I can make the intro, and that could be really cool.
Oh, that'll be great. Yes, that'll be nice. That'll work. That'll really activate, because you see, we creators and we are innovators, and the more we share our experience and discuss ideas,
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. It was super amazing having you. Do you have any last things you want to say?
and the more we share our experience and discuss ideas,
Oh, the space crash, whatever. Yeah, it was super cool. Having Click on. Um, yeah, yeah. Hopefully we can have him on again, and we can have more combos like that.